front wings and the back wings are still basically similar in the fact that you may know that butterflies and moths, where do they get their color pattern from?
Scales.
Powder.
Right, if you touch them, you get this powder on your hand. They've got these little scales all over their wings that give them the color. The scales are like shingles on a roof. If you got them under a microscope, they should look just like shingles on a roof. And pretty much, whenever I say all the insects in this group do this, it's never all. There's always exceptions. But for moths and butterflies, the characteristic of that order, it's called, they're scale wing insects, because most butterflies and moths have these little scales on their wings that give them their color. And that's something that's evolved on the wings of butterflies and moths. Up on the top right is a beetle, and for the most part, we call it, say, an insect is a beetle if it has its wings in this form. The two front wings have evolved to become like a hard shell. And the two back wings are still, have the veins, and they can use the two back wings to fly. They look like, your typical insect wing. So when the beetle flies, it lifts up those two front wings that are like shells, lifts them up, gets the two hind wings out so it can fly with those, and takes off. And then when it lands again, folds up the wings that it flies with, folds the shell back over it, and the shell, or technically it's called the elytra, protects the insect, protects the back wings and protects the abdomen because it's so tough and leathery. But that's characteristic of many of the beetles. The front wings have evolved so that they're not used for flying, and the back wings, they still fly with them. We've got an order of insects down in the bottom right called the true bugs. And their wings, they fly with their back wings just like a beetle, but their front wings are like something in between a regular wing and a beetle's wing. Like I said, the beetle's front wing is called an elytra, and for the true bugs, their wing is called a hemielytra, because the half of it close to the body, is tough and leathery like a beetle wing, and then the other half on the outside of the wing to the tip is thinner, almost like a flying wing. So when they fly, I don't know, probably they're flying with all four wings, but when they land, they fold those front wings back over the back wings and use that for protection, because part of it is kind of tough and leathery. Now I said technically all insects that have wings have four wings. Now if you're learning about insect identification, one of the orders you might learn to identify are flies. True flies. Dragonflies, they're not flies. If you look at them, they got four wings. Well, so there are a bunch of things that have fly in their name and aren't true flies. I'm drawing a blank on the other ones.
Damselfly.
Yeah, damselflies, dragonflies. But true flies, if you look in the book, it'll say true flies. You can tell them from the other insects because true flies only have two wings. Their scientific name is diptera, which means D-I-2, Terra, P-T-E-R-A, wing. So true flies only have two wings. And you go, well, you just told me all insects have four wings. Well, they do. Because remember how I said beetle, their front wings have evolved to be kind of leathery shells? In all the true flies, their front wings have evolved to be their flying wings. And their back wings have shrunk down to almost nothing. But they're still there. You see that crane fly up in the top left? You see the two big wings that it flies with? And then right behind them, you see two little knobs sticking out the back. Technically, that's its hind wings. But they've evolved down into little organs that are called, You don't want to throw too many, elytra and all these scientific names that keep throwing at you. These are halteres. For true flies, their last pair of wings evolved down to what are called halteres, and they're just balancing organs. When they're flying, they help them to balance. At least that's what the scientists tell us. It's interesting in science. You read books, you learn all this stuff, and then every once in a while you go, how do they know this? And usually they've done some elaborate experiments that demonstrated that they think they're right. But you can also find stuff in the literature that, for years and years and years, somebody said it was this. And then all of a sudden somebody finds out, well, no, we did this other experiment. That doesn't hold up, so we got to change what we're saying. Sometimes this stuff's falsified, and sometimes it's just overlooked. Sometimes, you can do all these experiments, they point in one direction, and somebody just didn't think in this direction, and then they find out, oh yeah, there's something we didn't think about, and now this makes sense. But we're going to go with what the scientists tell us right now. They say these hind wings have evolved into organs that they use for balance, and the front wings they fly with. So you can see the crane fly, the halteres stick out real nice, you can see them. The hover fly down on the bottom, it's got two little white tabs sticking out the back, they're the halteres. And up in the top right, there's a blowfly up there, and it's got bigger, those white patches up there are the halteres. And they're a little bigger and a little easier to see. But still technically, when you've got something and you're looking at it and going, is this a fly or is this a bee? If you can really tease the wings apart and see, if it's got four wings that look like they have veins and you can fly with them, then it's a bee or a wasp. If it's got the two flying wings and the two little tiny halteres, then you got yourself a fly. So that's some of the interesting things about where insect wings have gone. The other thing that's attached to the thorax are the insect legs. And again, we talked about the basic general insect mouth. We talked about basic general insect wings, four wings with fins, they fly. Here's the basic general insect leg. And it's got these, remember arthropods have jointed legs. So here, jointed segmented legs. So the leg has all these various parts that are different segments. The coxa is attached to the body, and then naturally the claws are at the end of the leg. And an ant is an example of the basic, standard, traditional, run-of-the-mill insect leg. So you know where I'm going with this. So insects, with all our millions of kinds of insects out there, their legs have evolved into all different shapes and sizes and forms. Praying mantis is out there looking for insects to catch, grab. So it's developed these raptorial legs. They can grab an insect and they've got all these spines on them. I don't know if you've ever tried to pick up a praying mantis and got pinched by them. Those spines hurt. And if you're an insect and it grabs you in it, you're pretty much trapped. So predaceous insects like praying mantis have evolved these raptorial legs to catch their prey. We've got the grasshopper on the far right. A lot of insects jump to either just get, why the grasshopper cross the road to get to the other side. And he jumped when he did it. So they've developed these powerful back legs that they can use for jumping. We've got the mole cricket up in the top right. Some insects live in the ground or underground. The mole cricket's one of them. You see its front legs look like shovels. They look like shovels with rakes on them. And they're pretty effective. They're like a little badger. And they're trying to get underground and they're digging in the dirt. And you can look at the front leg of a mole cricket and look at the front leg of a grasshopper. And who's going to have an easier time getting under a rock and in the dirt? Mole cricket for sure. Down on the bottom, we've got the honeybee, And its front legs, its middle legs are typical. Its back legs have evolved with these spines and hairs on them to pick up pollen. We hear so much in the news about honeybees and the pollination process and how they're so important for that. And a lot of pollinators land on flowers, and the pollen just sticks to their body or their face or whatever. And they go to the next flower, and then some of the pollen falls off, and the flower gets pollinated that way. So just landing on a flower and getting pollen on you and go to the next flower, it's just kind of an adventitious situation that happened. But some of the insects like honeybees have evolved to get more and more and more efficient at that, because they use the pollen to take back to their hive to feed to their young. So they don't want it to just, if some sticks to my body and I can rub it off when I get to the hive, that's good. You can see that big orange blob down on its hind leg. The pollen really sticks well to their legs, and when they get back to the hive, they can get it off and put it into the cells in the hive. So that's the direction their legs have taken. We have a bunch of insects that live in the water that are aquatic. And their legs have evolved to fit with that type of lifestyle. Look at the legs, they're wide, they're flat, they have these hairs on them so that when they're trying to get through the water, there's a lot of surface area, and it works well for them. Down on the bottom left is a whirligig beetle, and you look at its legs and they're just flat, short, flat things. And I look at that and almost think, well, I can see how it would be efficient to have a lot of surface area, to be flat like that, but they're so short and stubby. Does that really look like it would be efficient? But if you know whirligig beetles, if you ever seen whirligig beetles out on the surface of the water, they can really move. So looking at it, you might think that, I don't think that would be as efficient as the insect above it. But go look at some whirligig beetles on the water, and if you can even keep your eye on where they are, let alone catch one, you're doing good. So apparently that type of leg really does work. We're back to the dragonfly again. I've used that. This is an example for the eyes, for the antennae. Dragonfly legs. At first you look at them and go, well, they just look like the standard leg. There's nothing particularly crazy about those. They just look like the walking leg of an ant or something. But when you look at them carefully and you look at how they're positioned on the dragonfly, and you understand a little bit about the dragonfly biology. Dragonflies, as I mentioned earlier on, they're predators. They feed on mosquitoes and flies and things like that, and they catch them on the wing. So keeping that in mind, the dragonfly's legs have evolved so that the front two are curved back and the back four are curved forward, so that when it's flying, the legs are positioned like a basket, like a scoop basket. So when they swoop down on a mosquito, they're not just trying to grab them, they're scooping them up in this basket. So not only are the legs shaped like a basket, but you see all these spines on them. Remember I said the dragonfly has spines on its legs to hold its prey. The mantis has spines on its leg to hold its prey. Dragonflies have spines also, but they're, pointing in the right direction. So when it scoops the mosquito right out of the air and the spines just jab into the mosquito, it closes the basket up, and it's got its meal. So again, we could go on for hours about different kinds of insect legs, but I think you get the point. We get to the insect abdomen, and you can imagine it's evolved into various types of shapes and sizes. The insect abdomen is the big hunk of body at the end of the insect. It contains a lot of the insect's guts, where the digestion happens, and a lot of breathing happens, and waste is excreted out of the end of the abdomen. The sex organs are at the end of the abdomen. So, a lot's going on there. This, up at the top left is a blister beetle, and it looks kind of like an ant. It's got, you know, again, what you think of, the head, the thorax, and this big abdomen sticking out the back. But we've got something like the cicada in the middle, top middle, and as I said, technically it has a head, thorax, and an abdomen, but you might have to poke around a little bit to try and figure out where the thorax ends and where the abdomen begins, because it doesn't have that noticeable constriction like an ant does. But if you look and see where the wings are attached and where the legs are attached, and you go, well, here's the last pair of legs and here's the last pair of wings, that's probably where the thorax ends, and then the abdomen continues beyond that. Same thing on a dragonfly. Its thorax and its abdomen are pretty much the same width, doesn't have a real noticeable constriction between the two, but the color changes, at least on this guy. Gives you a heads up where the thorax ends and the abdomen begins. Down on the bottom, we've got some examples of some of the insects where we start to get into how the abdomens, some of the things have changed on the abdomen of different insects, again, to adapt to their type of lifestyle. We've got an earwig down on the left, and it's got these pinchers at the end of the abdomen. I'm still not sure exactly what those things are for. A lot of insects that have things on the end of their abdomen, they use them for sex, and earwigs might be part of it. But if you grab an earwig and pick it up, they tend to bend their abdomen around and start trying to pinch you with those. And maybe that's why it's evolved as a protection mechanism. That might be it. They usually don't do much damage. They scare you more than they do hurt you. They're not like getting pinched by praying mantis. In the center we have a hornet, and as you know, a lot of insects they can sting you, and the stinger is usually at the end of their abdomen. Hornets and bees. You can see the stingers sticking out of that hornet's abdomen there. That's where the direction a lot of insects' abdomens have evolved. Over on the right, we've got the firefly, or the lightning bug, which we don't see. I'd say we don't see in Idaho. Everyone, the current thought is, I grew up in the East. We used to see lightning bugs out there all the time. I come to Idaho. That's one of the things I miss about Idaho. I don't see lightning bugs. And the general consensus is we don't have lightning bugs out in Idaho. Two things is we do have insects in that family. We do have beetles in that lightning bug family out here, but they don't have lights on them. You can find lightning bugs, but their abdomens are just black. They're not too hard to find around here. But there is actually a population, or at least the last time anybody checked that I know, there is a population down near the Snake River of lightning bugs in Idaho that light up. At the College of Idaho Museum, where I'm a curator, we have some specimens in the collection there. And over the years, we've had people every once in a while go out on a collecting trip down in this one spot along the Snake River. They're there the right time of the year in June when the weather's just right, and these lightning bugs flying around Lake Gone and all that. No one's sure why we have this one little population.
And then in a certain area, like Lewiston, or is it?
It's down around Marsing, around there, around Marsing, Murphy. I guess it might be closer to Murphy. I've never gone on any of the
Kind of a
hunts
warmer,
with them.
maybe a warmer.
Maybe, but I mean, it's pretty warm up around
Yes,
Lewiston and Riggins and those. And no one's ever reported one from there. Again, it doesn't mean they're not there. People find new things all the time. But so far in Idaho, that's the only place I've ever heard of there being a population of lightning bugs that light. So, for things like the hornets and bees and wasps, they have their stinger at the end of their abdomen.